Russia's attack on Ukraine has upended the lives of people throughout the region, driving a wedge between neighbors, friends, families. As the war reached the 6-month mark, Ukrainians commemorated their national holiday in fear, defiance, and sorrow over the absence of those who've departed. In neighboring Russia, repression has intensified. Can resistance survive? And what about in Belarus, Putin's trusted ally, some would say vassal? On To The Point, we're asking, tragic triangle, is Putin destroying Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia? Welcome to The Point. It is a great pleasure to greet our guests. Ekaterina Shulman is a political scientist and associate professor at the Moscow School for the Social and Economic Sciences, who left Russia in April to take up a fellowship at the Robert Bosch Stiftung here in Germany. And it's a pleasure to welcome Olga Kontsevievich. She is from Ukraine. She's currently journalist in residence at the Berlin Social Sciences Center, WZB. She's been overseeing reporting for the online news portal 24TV from her base here in Germany. And also with us is Belarusian freelance journalist and author Marina Rachley. She works with the German Marshall Fund and has written extensively about her homeland. Olga, in his speech on Ukraine's Independence Day, President Zelensky said Ukraine is, quote, a nation reborn. Would you say that's true? And if so, what is new about Ukraine since the war?
Yes, thank you for this question, because now I feel that we are united more than ever. And I can say that I didn't feel it before, because we had many troubles, many fights inside our country and many different opposition questions. But now I feel that we are united because we have a really big threat in front of us. And I believe that now we will have more time for building some new version of Ukraine, some better version, because now we see that we deserve and we can resist, even if we have a lack of time, a lack of resources, even if we have some problems that not depend on us. But still we have strong allies and we have many opportunities to reach new goals. And I guess after this war, and I believe that it will be a victory of Ukraine and that we will reach our goal of free Ukraine and we will liberate all the territories that now occupied by Russia. So I guess that after that we will have a new, better Ukraine that will show all the world that we managed, and even if you have some obstacles, you can overcome it. So yeah, I hope we will have a great example of some strong democracy, because before people usually called us young democracy and so on, but yeah, now I guess we have to
come back to exactly that point in a moment. Ekaterina, as Ukraine was commemorating its Independence Day, Russian police were arresting one of the most vocal critics who still is in Russia, namely Yevgeny Roitsman,
one of the last, I think, opposition politicians remaining at large.
Exactly. And he was formerly mayor of Yekaterinburg. He said, as he was led away, I'm quoting, "We know all there is to know about our country. This," meaning his arrest, "is nothing new." How much do average Russian citizens really know about the war itself and also about the level of repression in the country?
Since the beginning of the invasion, about 7,000 online resources were blocked by the Russian authorities, by the prosecutor office or Roskomnadzor. And this is just online. The most popular radio station in Moscow, Echo of Moscow, was closed in the first days of March. The only oppositional TV channel, TV Rain, stopped operating about the same time. So we should not underestimate the degree of control over the information sphere. Television, although declining in popularity, and there has been an especially sharp decline during the last 6 months, is still #1 source of information for an average citizen, especially, or to be more specific, for citizens aged above 50, which is, or rather older than 55, which is also coincidentally the main group of support for the things that are happening, for any actions of the authorities. So there's this direct correlation between media consumption and political position, political views and pronouncements. On the internet, in YouTube or in Telegram, there's certainly access to alternative points of view. Telegram,
including, of course, your own YouTube channel. You have over 1 million viewers, as I understand it.
Subscribers, yes. This may be the sign, not so much of my own prowess as an information source, but of the hunger for any sort of alternative information. Yes, the main beneficiaries have been YouTube and Telegram. It's interesting that Russian authorities, generous as they are with their blockings and closing down of media outlets, are yet wary of blocking YouTube, which is immensely popular among the people also for the non-political content. So the answer to your question as to any question about Russia is both yes and no. There's a scarcity of information available to those who would not seek it intentionally. So if they just turn on TV or if they open their browser page and then the most popular first page will be Yandex, then they will not see any other point of view rather than official one. But if they choose to dive a little deeper, then there are certainly sources that can afford.
Do they have to use the VPN as in Belarus to access certain services?
VPN consumption has increased 100% since February. So now it's quite a household tool. But I'm
told that the authorities can trace VPN use. VPN numbers, of course, are the numbers that people use to try to access the internet from open sources beyond their own countries. But I'm told that is traceable.
I think we shouldn't scare people overmuch with thinking what the authorities may or may not do. So far, the use of VPN is not criminalized in Russia, so people are using it. It's funny that here in Germany, I had to install a VPN that pretends that I'm accessing internet from Russia because I need, for my professional work, I need access to official sites like sites of the Russian ministries, and these are blocked from here.
One of the many paradoxes of this war. Marina, let me ask you about a paradox in Belarus. Belarusian President Lukashenko has, of course, allowed his country's territory to be used by Russia to stage its war, including missile bases that have fired into Ukraine. Yet, he congratulated Ukraine on its Independence Day and said that he is convinced, and again I'm quoting, that today's contradictions will not destroy the centuries-old foundation of good neighborly relations. Is this pure cynicism on his part, or does it indicate that there are limits to Belarus's support for Russia?
I guess it clearly indicates that there are limits to what you should take seriously, what's coming from the current Belarusian, or from the current Belarusian government and the president. There was this congratulation. One of the wordings was that he wished the peaceful skies to the Ukrainian nation, and Ukrainians were writing that in the afternoon the shellings of the Ukrainian cities were done from the Belarusian territory. And it's interesting that one of the probably for me personally, the amazing thing that this war very clearly revealed is that probably coming from this post-Soviet background, being born in post-Soviet Belarus, grown up there, we also tend to think that we know our neighbors, that we're basically all the same. The Russians, the Ukrainians, the Belarusians, more or less the same nations, post-Soviet nations. But basically the last 30 years, every country had lived their own life and developed in different directions. The Ukrainians has never experienced the authoritarian rule hand the way Belarusians and Russians did. They cannot grasp it. Why Belarusians and Russians are not out there in the street protesting? I mean,
when it's so easy, when you read those Ukrainian comments, it's so simple. You just get out.
I mean, rationally, they know the cost of it, that you will be in prison. But because in Ukraine, for the last 30 years, it was possible to go out and protest.
Not
and then
every
Belarus
time.
for...
Like when we talk about Yanukovych, for example, it also was sometimes very terrifying to go out on streets and to protest, and we saw it in 2014, so we came through this. So I guess we don't know exactly what you experienced, like in Russia and Belarus, but we also believe that if it's like a large amount of people, it's like a big crowd, you can't pack everyone to Autozak, yeah?
That's right. But
in Belarus in 2020, they had huge crowds.
30 years of... and I mean, a disclaimer probably that, of course, the sufferings of Belarusians and Russians, you cannot in any remote way compare it to what Ukrainians are going through with the bombings and shellings and people dying. But it's the situation where the protest is there, but it takes other forms. It's in the underground. It's, I don't know, that in the main thoroughfare of Minsk, there will be an open window and the anthem of Ukraine will be blasting out. People showing their attitude, but in a very limited way, possibilities that they have.
And I want to come back to exactly that, but we have a short report, and I'd like to take a closer look at life in all three countries, Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. Sorrow, worry, and fear coexist with a strange normality in all three as people go about their business.
Everything seems normal here in the Ukrainian city of Kramatorsk, not far from the front line. We are so tired because of the war. Meanwhile, in neighboring Belarus, President Lukashenko is presenting himself as a caretaker. The opposition, once powerful, languishes in exile or prison. No one dares rebel against the dictator's unholy alliance with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has a firm grip on his country. In Moscow and St. Petersburg, everything seems normal. Cafes and bars are full. Only a courageous few still dare to openly criticize the war of aggression. Meanwhile, in the Siberian provinces where most soldiers are recruited, families mourn more and more fallen sons. But even in Ukraine, critical voices are growing. Protesters fear that as the war drags on, democracy and the achievements of the Orange Revolution will fall by the wayside. Can there be freedom for Ukraine only if there is also freedom for Russia and Belarus?
And straight on to you, Olga. It's a big one.
Yeah, I remember like Tikhanovskaya said this, yeah. I guess it was her quote. But, you know, I guess, yeah, we're all in the same like informational space, even if you now want to divide, yeah, our culture and our common ecosystem, yeah, and heritage. But anyway, like we like influence to each other. So anyway, we will need to get back to that dialogue. Maybe after the war. Maybe now we are too emotional. Even I listen to like Russian music, read many Russian books. For example, yeah, I read the book that I guess Katerina edited, the Spinkler book about, yeah.
The better angels of our nature, about the global decline of violence. Yes, yeah, one of my favorite books ever.
Yeah, so like he told that for like last like 70 years we see these degrees of some violence in the world, and now
the big countries almost never go to war with each other any longer.
That was shattered on February 24th, 2022.
Now we're experiencing this, yeah. So, and even like some great, beautiful minds, they were wrong, yeah. So that is why I can't like say like maybe exactly what will happen next. But I guess that we all make something brilliant on our own like way. For example, I see many Belarusian people who now joined some special regimes of Ukrainian army. I see like Russian people who helped us here, like for example on a train station, just to translate something from German or to send like some, I don't know, special letters to administration and so on. And they were very helpful, and all that things, they really matters. So I get that maybe we all need to do something that we can do as like a person independently, and then it will bring some result.
Let me just ask you, because our report ended with protests in Ukraine itself, and we talked about Ukraine being reborn, you talked about Ukrainian democracy. How stable and free is Ukraine today? President Zelensky has become a hero to millions of people around the world, and yet there has been some criticism, particularly after he fired the head of the intelligence service and also the state prosecutor, some questions raised about democracy and its viability in Ukraine.
First of all, democracy is very broad like term, and like even some like big scientists, they like also find about like what is the democracy meaning now. But if we talk about Ukraine, it's really nice that we have this changes of some public leaders, some like really big decisions. It means that something works. And also I can tell you that people in Ukraine, they are so critical to the power, and they are so like sometimes angry with our officials. So
It's a national tradition.
Yeah, it's now traditional to go to the streets and to protest. So believe me, if something will happen, they will stop Zelensky. But I also could explain you that, for example, our Ukrainian constitution states that president of Ukraine needs to bring this command as a chief of an army if something like happened. So that is why it's also his like direct decision and his need to rule the country during such wartime. So it's not like authoritarianism, it's just the matter of time, and it's just declared in our constitution. So he behaved like this because he have a right.
Ekaterina, how firm is Putin's grip? Our report asked the question, can there only be true freedom for Ukraine if Russia and Belarus are free? When could that day come?
That's a good question, $1 million question, I would say. So far, our Russian ruling elite has demonstrated a certain degree of unity. The civic authorities, the financial authorities have demonstrated much higher competence than the military ones. It's a kind of a paradox that the power that relies so much on security services and on the military that has done so badly on security services that have misinformed the president on such a grand way, while the much despised civic bureaucracy has continued to hold the country together, to preserve the economy in the midst of the sanctions storm. So this is kind of ironic. But at this point, we must say that Russian power machine is, I can't say comparatively stable, but it is kind of preventing the collapse. So it is possible still for an average Russian to live as if nothing much has happened.
You managed to leave the country. Many others have left as well. Does this brain drain of critics, oppositional voices, does it help or hurt the opposition?
It certainly helps the regime by leaving out the necessity of a real wide, full-scale repressive campaign. It has been in the nature of our political regime to push the critics to leave rather than to prevent them from living in the Soviet or German manner. So after February 24th, it has accelerated. This exodus has been tremendous. I have begun to realize it only after I have arrived here myself. I've been much more fortunate than many others. I was not under any direct threat, so I came to basically to enjoy my fellowship. But many of my colleagues, my friends, people who were teachers in the same universities that I taught in. They were obliged to leave because of direct danger. And this is an extremely sad thing for the country in general. We can imagine that it's better for the opposition, for the oppositionally minded rather, to be at large than to be in prison, but it's sad and tragic to realize how many people, educated people, creative people, have chosen to leave the country rather than to remain. I can't say that it in any way brings closer the times of common freedom, which you mentioned.
And Marina, where does the opposition movement stand in Belarus today? We talked about, or it was mentioned, the massive protests in 2020 after Alexander Lukashenko was accused of manipulating the election. Has the opposition been snuffed out since then?
It wouldn't be serious to talk about opposition inside the country at this point of time. I mean, what we've been observing in Russia for the last half a year has been taking place in Belarus for 2 years now. Since the end of the protests and the wave of repressions unrolled over the country, it has not stopped. It has never stopped. As of yesterday, there have been 1,300 political prisoners in Belarus. In terms of Germany, it's 11,500. So 11,000 political prisoners, and 33,000 arrested. That would make almost 300,000 in Germany in terms
in proportion.
In the proportion in terms of numbers of the
Russia,
German
I
population.
think 500 people have been designated political prisoners by Memorial. So, and Russia is, let me remind you, a much larger country than Belarus. So yes, I meet so many Belarusian immigrants here in Berlin.
If Ukraine were to actually succeed in winning the conflict with Russia, would that also have a follow-on effect for Lukashenko?
Definitely, yes. That's to use the famous motto, the words of the Belarusian and Polish hero Tadeusz Kościuszko, for our freedom and yours. What Ukrainians are heroically doing all this for 6 months, half a year. I mean, the active phase of the war, because the war started 8 years ago. Their struggle is not only for a better future of Ukraine, but also Belarus and Russia.
Let me ask all of you, and I want to come back to our title because our show the clock is running. We asked tragic triangle, whether Putin is destroying all three of your countries. And one of the most potent weapons that's being used in this conflict is, of course, nationalism. We saw it in the murder now of the daughter of the ultra-nationalist Russian Dugin. Daria Dugina was murdered, apparently targeted attack at him. Massive response by ultra-nationalists in Russia. Would you say that this nationalism is poisoning the region and will go beyond the conflict itself? Briefly, Olga?
If we talk about like Ukrainian case, so it's it's irony because we don't have like a larger group of nationalists, maybe some marginalized people, but like nationalist parties, they didn't reach even like the level that they needed for the parliament. So I guess we need to be careful with this problem, not only like you're talking about our region, post-Soviet region or Eastern Europe, but in EU we also see that societies are polarized and there are many like people with this nationalist view, but not in that way as like Russian propaganda put it like on the table when they talk about Ukraine.
Ekaterina?
In Russia, ethnic nationalism also enjoys rather marginal support. It's an exotic creed. Imperial type of nationalism is more understandable to broader Russian public, but this is also propagated by mostly by Russian state TV. Once you turn it off or change the tenor, then this will also change. Ethnic nationalism, what you call ultra-nationalism, is not popular in Russia, and we have seen various examples of it. If it were, it would have enjoyed a renaissance in 2014, but this is not what happened.
And I would say that any serious reconciliation efforts or dialogue and this tragic triangle, as you put it, could only be feasible when the war ended. I don't think it's possible for the three nations to sit peacefully at the same table as we're doing now before Ukraine prevails and the war is over.
Can you imagine Ukraine actually winning this war, Ekaterina?
In postmodern times, war and victory and defeat are definable in very different ways. We have just mentioned that the war has been going on for 8 years. So 8 years hence, how will we define war? When did it start and when will it end?
But the best case scenario, the war ends, Ukraine wins, Russia...
What does it mean? Getting back Crimea, stopping Russian army where it now
the very,
is?
very best case scenario.
This is not achievable by military means.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut off our discussion right there. I'm so grateful to all of you for being with us here today, and I'm very glad to have all of you tuning in. See you soon.